pursuing siblings aggressively.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Some pretty
exists.
scary things.
Yes.
And I've had parents sometimes ask me, well, shouldn't I just work with an adult therapist for that support?
Mm,
And
good
so
question.
I have a little bit of a pushback on that. And sure, if you have found an adult therapist, a therapist that works with primarily adults,
Mhm.
um, that works for you and you have a connection with, absolutely keep doing that. I mean, who am I to stand in the way of something that's helpful? But I've also had many parents say, well, I've tried my own therapy and it
Mhm.
just made me feel worse because the
Oh,
therapist did not understand the reality of my
yeah,
parenting journey.
yes.
Even though they said they weren't really going to help me with, that I was, they were just their therapist, they would pepper in little things about, kind of standard parenting advice. And it just made me feel worse. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
So I'm paraphrasing, but I've heard that before. And so I think one thing that's unique about you and I and the position we sit in to support parents in their journey is we know what that reality is like. We know that lived experience of the child with the razor thin window of tolerance,
Yeah.
where every single aspect of the day is hard.
The battle.
It is not like what you read in the parenting books. It is not like, I mean, so I think that is a really valuable
Yeah.
um, body of knowledge that we hold through our experience working with kids, knowing kids, having our own kids, having our
Yeah.
own experiences that really inform us and can lead to greater compassion and understanding so that it's not just the same standard stuff being parroted again and again.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I've got the flashlight out and I'm going to point at different things that, bring
Mhm.
to light so that
Mhm.
there is more breadth to their understanding of who their particular child is, what that nature piece is, and how the nurture piece might need to adjust to fit with that particular
Mhm.
profile, that nature profile. So I like that we're naming some of the horrible things that happen behind people's closed doors, because I don't know that there's a lot of places where parents who are suffering with that hear that
Mhm.
they're not alone. There are
Mhm.
others. And so
Mhm.
I'm hoping maybe at the end we kind of come up with a couple of things that we can put in the show notes or whatever you call it of recommended podcasts or resources or communities.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that would be really lovely to just sort of on a level normalize it. I know it won't ever feel normal because it's not what's in the broader community, but just to know you're not alone and that there are other parents that are having similar struggles, things like going to work is my reprieve.
Yes,
I dread
I
coming
get a
home,
break.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
how is that for a total, reversal of what, the standard
mhm,
thought process might be. But when you've got a child who is struggling so much, that might be your reality. That work
yeah,
is your reprieve. That
yes.
that is the easier thing. That going home is the thing you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And to normalize that and give space for that reality. Because to just pretend it isn't there doesn't do us any good. We need to be honest about what we're thinking and experiencing and feeling and have safety around all of that and acceptance. So I do think some of the parenting communities that have, cropped up online are really beautiful spaces for that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think there's a one size fits all. So not every community is going to match with each person. And I don't think that communities in and of themselves are always the only thing that's needed also that might be partnered with some professional support or with readings that you're also doing or with a spiritual community you're also connected to. So often it takes sort of a web or a network of things. And so but I do think that a community can be a really powerful resource. And I would love to include some of that in the notes.
Yeah, so afterwards we can pop a list together.
Yeah.
It's also so hard on a marriage I am imagining you see what I see, where one parent moves to the accommodation and the other parent, right, the more heartfelt, the more
Yeah.
connecting side, and the other
Yeah.
one moves over to the
Yeah.
action side to try to, if
Yeah.
you were just firmer, if you were just clearer, if there was just more structure, and it's not gender. It just depends on right how each parent is trying to do the best for their kiddo, and it comes from their history.
Right. It comes from their history, but then what they end up doing is polarizing. So the more accommodating the one parent is, the more steadfast in the, firm limits, consequences, and boundaries the other parent becomes. That only
Yeah.
activates the more accommodating parent that just becomes more so. I mean, so that they start maybe, here and here, but before too long, I mean, they are miles apart in terms of their approaches. And so that is so painful. I think it's a really common reality. And it's also, as we can imagine, does no favors to the kid. That is not going to be an easy one to navigate such vastly different, orientations and relationships. I find just naming that as a pattern, as a
Mhm,
neutral observation without a judgment that one is better or the other.
mhm.
That's where the language of the neurorelational framework and heart, hand, and head to kind of name those modalities in neutral language. I think it can be helpful and at least just diffusing the tension
Yeah, yeah.
of who's right.
Well, one
Uh,
of the things I love to do with that, and when we talk about parent work, often for me, I try to have both parents in the room at the same time.
mhm, mhm,
But you use heart, hand, head. I use or heart, head, head. I use connect, reflect, and act because
mhm,
connect is the heart, reflect is the head, and hand is the
mhm,
act. So I don't want to
mhm.
confuse
The
people who
same
listen.
thing. Yeah.
But I use that difference as an opportunity to practice validation because
Oh, I
I
like that.
find validation to be a term that parents have not really gotten a lot of felt experience around.
Yeah.
So if they can partner and validate each other's perspective,
Mhm,
so the other
mhm,
feels that they are
mhm,
deeply heard,
mhm.
and then reverse
Yes.
the other way, they are practicing connection. And so
Yeah.
that can generalize to the children, but it also can help the relationship communicate, the partners communicate and understand and regulate each other better.
Absolutely. That actually reminds me of a little kind of nugget that sometimes I use with parents that are in that really just depleted, but also kind of polarized place is that to build on that validation, to say, both of you are so depleted. This has been so hard on both of you. We've kind of reflected on how you orient differently to it. Neither is
Mhm.
better or worse, but the bottom line is you are both beyond spent.
Yeah.
And I see that, I hear that, and I see you working really hard and doing some really amazing and beautiful things with your child that might not feel like it's getting traction or making much
Right.
difference, but I'm hearing you both tell me versions of some really, wonderful things you're doing. And I wonder if you see in each other those moments. If you
Mhm.
see, mom, dad doing anything that you're like, that was, or vice versa, or even, you know, self-regulating enough in a really tough moment that you see, each other kind of really pulling through in ways that you think, wow, that was good.
Oof.
And starting to create a culture of acknowledging that with each other so that you can start feeding each other, nurturing each other a little bit
Yeah.
because, in this depleted state, it's really hard. And, I wish I could be a fly on the wall and feed you both this, these little
Yeah.
nurturing nuggets throughout the day because I know I would be giving them, but I can't. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if we can do that together. And that might seem like a really tall order since you two are pretty polarized right now. And in fact, maybe really angry with each other.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but is it something we can try out in a tiny little one drop at a time way to see if we can
Mhm.
start feeding each other a little bit more because you're in there's a lot that divides you, but the thing that is you're in the same place of being absolutely exhausted.
and dedicated and
Mhm,
dedicated.
mhm, mhm.
So you wouldn't be so exhausted and angry if you weren't trying to show up with every
Absolutely.
ounce of your being.
Right.
So Jessica, I really enjoy sharing with you and
Yes.
collaborating with you and talking about all of this with you. So
Likewise, this was
I
really a beautiful opportunity, and I would welcome, if we get inspired to chat about other topics, to